Welcome to Fiction and Focus, a podcast where we explore the craft of writing without taking ourselves too seriously. I'm Nathan Harms.
And I'm Wesley Watts. Each episode, we'll discuss uplifting topics like the soul-crushing pressure of expectations, the suffocating grip of self-doubt, and the swift-kicking unmentionables of rejection.
We'll share our experiences, struggles, and heartaches in the hope that you might find some small measure of comfort in our collective misery, or at least have a laugh at our expense.
So grab a pen, paper, and your favorite writing snack, and join us as we put fiction in focus.
Welcome, my word nerds, to Fiction in Focus. I am Nathan Harms, and
I'm Wesley Watts. Woo!
Woo! We're here. We took a week off. I don't know how it translates to how you're listening to it now, but we had 1 week in there, beginning of May, where there was not an episode, and we also didn't record that week either. So
Yep.
we're coming off of vacation, a short hiatus. You know, we are.
It felt like vacation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was...
I probably actually could have used this probably but we would have just sat around and just been like terribly unfunny, which we already are, and not very knowledgeable, which we already are. So it felt like a good time to take a little bit of a break, but yeah, we're back though. We have stuff to talk about, things to do. I want to start off this show with our favorite segment. Wesley, what the hell have you been doing?
Oh, I can't talk about that. No, I have I think we already talked about. Man, I don't remember what we talked about. So I think we already discussed the writing challenge. That's over and done.
Did we discuss that you finished it though?
Yeah.
Yes,
I
we
think
did.
so.
Okay, it was that memorable.
Like I tell you what, like normally when you're done with writing a story, like it's cemented, right? You remember that shit.
Yeah.
This one, because it happened so fast and I haven't touched it since, like I put it away. I literally don't remember hardly anything about it.
That's awesome.
It's like that book that you read really quick over the weekend and never thought of again. Only I wrote the damn thing. So I'm not sure if that's a good sign or not. But no, I've actually been spending like every little bit of free time I've got working on a tool, and I don't want to really talk about it too much yet, but
top secret stuff here.
It is top secret. It's going to make me millions and millions of dollars, I'm sure. But no, it's almost ready for some beta testers, and after those beta testers, I'll try to refine it, and that'll be motivation to get my website out because I want to have it on my website.
I won't ask you at the end of the show if your website's ready.
You already know it's not.
Yeah, right. The running gag has been ran.
But eventually you're going to ask that, and I'm going to be like, yes, it's up, and it's updated. And it looks
shocking.
It looks okay-ish.
It looks okay. You click stuff and it takes you other places, which is really all you need a website to do.
Looks like MySpace from like 1998. But yeah, pretty boring on this front. But you have finished your artwork, right?
Correct. Yes, I just finished artwork for my next book. I have a tentative title. I'm not going to mention it yet because I'm not 100% sure on it. But I have a tentative title and a rough outline, and then the actual start of an outline that's about half done now.
Oh, nice.
I've put in a little bit more time to that, and the artwork is done for it. And I have not written one line of the book.
That's okay though. You're doing all the prep work.
Yeah. I go to bed at night and I like think about like that first chapter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I
that's a good sign. That's a really good sign.
Yeah. And I just like, because I want to write. I want to write like this weird, like almost like the Great American Novel. Like it has a really classic feel to it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But it's going to be a fantasy book, you know. There's dragons in it, death is in it,
Okay.
you know, a witch, all this shit. But it's going to take place on the farm in Kentucky. So I wanted to have kind of that, like, I wanted to have that like kind of southern flair to it. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to
mixture.
have that. Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting. But I'm like that kind of Americana kind of vibe to it. So.
What time period are you thinking? Is it contemporary or?
I think it's going to be contemporary. I'm not going to really put a time period on it, but I'm thinking somewhere in like 90s, 2000s. And I know that's not contemporary now, but like, you know, I'm not going to like date it out. And there's not going to really be a mention of like technology or anything within it. So essentially, I mean, you think about a lot of those farms, like in some of the you know, more rural states, and they haven't changed in 40 years. Yeah. And the people who live there really have, you know, they still dress the same and talk the same and act the same. They just might have a cell phone buried in their pocket somewhere, and they're watching Netflix at night. But aside from that, it's very much it's kind of like the time. It's the land that stands still in time, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of endearing. I like the small town vibe. I wrote it decently for the book I did, Petrichor, because it takes place in a small town. And I like that vibe. I like the idea that, like, the post office is right down the street from, like, the library. And I like that, you know, should I get in my car and walk there, or get in my car and drive there, or just walk there? So it's kind of fun. It's fun to write those characters. So I am super excited about it. Outside of that, the Shadows That We Chase and Other Tales, I've had finished getting notes from beta readers and yourself and so on. So all the files for that, like the actual manuscript and the artwork, are in my brother's hands now. And he is compiling it together, and got my first glimpse at, like, close to it, you know, the final version of it the other day. Right. It looks really cool. So hopefully in the next few weeks, ordering in some proof copies to check out, and
awesome.
Go from there. So, yeah. And then other news, I'm still going to be unemployed. No, okay, that joke has just ran its course at this point.
And it's still a ways off too.
It's true. Like, at some point, I feel like the joke is just no longer going to be a joke. My anxiety will just start rising to the top every time I say it, and then when I get right towards the end,
now.
Oh God, it's so long away. Oh God, now it's not. You know, it's weird. You know, the pacing of life, if you will.
Yeah, nice segue.
Was it? Didn't feel forced at all.
No, you didn't shoehorn that shit in.
Wesley, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about, what was it? Oh yeah, pacing. Dramatic pause.
Yeah.
And then we talk very quickly. And we slow
absolutely.
It down. No, so this one came up. I wanted to talk about this because I have a friend that has recently started writing again, which I'm very excited for her. I think I told you that she was a critique partner back in like 2011, 2012. And I kind of looked back and that was a lie. She was actually my critique partner back in like my first novel era. So like, back when I was still fighting. So like 2008, 2007, 2008, something like that.
Yeah.
So I've known her for a very long time, but yeah, she just started writing again, and she's going back through her old manuscript that she's reworked this thing and rewritten it several times. And I've read a few different versions of it. She's kind of going back through it to like see what it needs if she wants to try to rework it. And one of the things that she was talking about is the pacing is all off. And it kind of got me thinking, and I'm like, I think about pacing very, very differently than I used to.
Yeah.
Just over the last couple of months, like my thought process on it is drastically altered, and it kind of made me want to, pull those thoughts together, talk about it, and see what your thoughts are, because we've talked around it,
right?
But we've actually never really discussed it, not just on the show, but just in general either.
Yeah, right into the belly of the beast. Did you tell your friend, were you like, I have this podcast and you're going to want to tune in to learn all the tricks of the trade?
I actually sort of did. I was like, that would be a good podcast topic. She's like, you have a podcast? It's like, yeah, I didn't realize I hadn't told her. But so yeah, she's now another listener. So we're up to like 4.
Right. Maybe 5. Who knows?
Maybe 5.
Maybe 5. It is kind of funny though when people are like, you have a podcast. So sometimes my immediate response wants to be, doesn't everybody?
It's true.
But it's been fun. We're rolling through. We're adding more to it, and it's interesting to me that every time I think I'm like we're gonna run out of shit to talk about, 10 more ideas pop in my head. And even to the point where we can go beyond the approaches that maybe some people we've talked about a few different ideas, but I think we have a lot of fun stuff in the future. We just have to pace ourselves, and take our time. All right. So,
holy shit, man. Okay.
Okay. So let's start at the beginning.
Yeah. Am I going to ask the questions? Or are you going to ask the questions? I was thinking I was going to, but it looks like you're.
You know what? Yeah, go ahead. You
looks like you had them in the chamber.
I had them on the phone, which I feel like me just looking down, scrolling is not going to be nearly as authoritative as you asking
don't put it
the
up
questions.
On the screen? Well, also like, when you're like on here and the camera stops here and your hands are down here and you're like, just like breathing into the microphone. Oh, no, I'm not. I'll stop there.
Let's talk about pacing and speed.
Oh, all right. Welcome to our OnlyFans episode.
It's like every episode, dude. If we can get through 13 minutes without talking about dicks, I'm just astounded.
That's what I miss about the early days of Twitter. Like before it got all like turned into a dumpster fire. It was just like it was too short to write much of anything, so people just wrote fucking fart and dick jokes, and it was good.
We were all happy with that.
We were. I was very happy with that. Anyway, so the first question is, and I really wanted to hear your response to this because mine's taken a different angle. Like I said, a very different angle than you do. But what is pacing?
Right. So my opinion on this has actually changed pretty drastically over the last few years as well. So I'll put that out there. When I first started writing, I looked at pacing as overall within the scene.
Okay.
So I looked at how I wanted to deliver information, usually conversation between 2 characters, 3 characters, whatever, and how I wanted to pace the overall information that I was trying to put out.
Okay.
So by adding, kind of leaning into the essentially the reader, leaning into them learning information with the characters, and how I wanted to delve that out to them in a way that felt rewarding. Is how I kind of used to look at it more so. Because I didn't.
Bad definition.
It's not a bad definition, but it's a very, it's like a microcosm, right? Yeah. Like it's a tight way to look at it. And so what I would do is I'd have this whole outline, right, of a story, and then my pacing was pretty much only used. My ideas of like thinking about pacing and like trying to like tone it and have those pauses and stuff like that was really only in there for dialogue in certain scenes. Now that I've written more and released more, I've started to look at it on a bigger scale. And so for me, pacing is something I use all the time while I'm writing, because I feel like the pace of the story, not just the reveal or the conversation, is just as important. It's really easy to like run through a fight scene really quick, right? Because it's fast paced. That's what a fight scene is. And so we find ourselves wanting to write it very quickly. It's 2 pages, instead of 4 pages of dialogue, right? But the truth of the matter is they might take actually the same amount of time in real life. And how do you pace that out to engage the reader? And so I've started to look at things beyond dialogue and really try to just structure the whole thing to have a certain tone to it. And then if things get, anxiety comes up or whatever, the tone quickens a little bit, and then bring it back down, have a moment to breathe before the next thing. And so I started kind of looking at it from like a musical standpoint, is what I've started to do in the last few years, of like drum, soft, heavy. The smile that you have on your face is telling. Wesley, what is pacing?
No, I wasn't trying to interrupt you.
No, that's kind of it though. Like that's kind of how I've started to look at it. It's just like a song,
So
soft, loud.
That's kind of how I started. That was my original I started when I started like working on trying to figure out pacing, coming from music like we did.
Yeah.
I was thinking, how do you put an album together? Heavier song, lighter song, heavier song, lighter song, so it flows and you don't get bored. You don't want to like front load all of your heavy hitters and then the second half of your album's like your slow acoustic songs. So you want them like, and then you kind of decide like, do you want it to be heavy or soft at the end? Like, what is that final taste you want to leave them with? That sort of thing. Yeah. So that's really the way I started like trying to like gauge each scene. I tried to give it kind of like some like ephemeral value of heavy to soft, or like energetic or calm, whatever that the case may be. And I'm not saying that I don't think there's some value to that. But more recently I kind of realized, or at least in my opinion, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but I don't think pacing is real.
Ooh. So conspiracy theory time, folks. Yeah.
Get your tinfoil hat out.
I like it. I love it.
No, this might make more sense in just a moment. Okay. So, when do we actually talk about pacing most of the time? Like you're critiquing your buddy's work or whatever. Right. Or you're getting a critique back.
Yeah.
Or you're reading a review and somebody says this, whatever the case may be. It's usually in response to a piece of work.
Right.
And it's usually, the pacing is too fast or too slow.
Yeah.
But what does that actually tell you?
Right.
It doesn't tell you dick.
Yeah.
It tells you that this person's subjective experience of that dragged or felt rushed. And what I started thinking about it was like, you're grabbing at smoke. So pacing is like, it's pain. So what you're doing is somebody's going to the doctor and saying, I have pain here. You don't go to the doctor and get a diagnosis. You have pain. Oh shit. Right?
Right.
Pain is a symptom of some kind of underlying cause.
Right.
So that's what I've started thinking of pacing is when somebody points out that pacing is too fast or too soft.
Yeah.
They're actually trying to say something else and they don't even realize it. And there's some kind of underlying cause.
Yeah. I wonder, and as you're saying that, I'm kind of mulling it over in my head. I wonder if it shows maybe the strengths and weaknesses in your storytelling, as far as maybe likable characters versus unlikable characters, scenes that work versus scenes that don't work. If someone says the pacing felt too fast in this area, maybe it's because it's a really, really good scene, and they're like, you could really chew the scenery for a little bit longer. Or, man, it feels like you spent a really long time on this conversation and the pacing seemed just like really slow. Maybe you should relook at that entire conversation, because maybe there's actually something that's missing from it where they're not enjoying how long you're staying there, if that makes sense.
And we're actually just kind of rolling straight into the next question. So, I mean, maybe we should just talk. No, I'm legit. Maybe we should just talk instead of ask the questions. Because we're talking about like how we're jumping straight into like, how do you fix it? How do you diagnose it?
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. So like, a conversation that might seem too slow, look at what's in the conversation.
Yeah.
We've talked about this scene before, but that first scene in Inglourious Bastards,
right?
That is a really long conversation.
Oh my gosh.
And very little gets revealed. Very little actually happens, but you are just hooked.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And like, what's going on that's driving that forward? And like, so if you're seeing it, or if your conversation feels like it's dragging, why is it dragging? Why is it not interesting? Are you saying things multiple times that don't need to be said?
Right. Yeah.
And I would say on a larger scale, on a macro scale of your entire story, that might be the biggest cause of slow pacing. Like, do you have scenes in here that you've actually already done this? Like, you've already done this characterization. You've already gone to this place. You've already done whatever the hell it is. And you're kind of revisiting it for some other reason. And you kind of think that the scene has some other purpose, but really what the audience is grabbing is that it's the same characterization of, from 2 scenes ago. That's going to make it drag.
I'm reminded, we should get a counter every time we mention like a movie that we've talked about before. I'm reminded of Inception for this specifically. So like we've said, we both really, really like that movie. It's not without its flaws. I have some gripes with it. My biggest gripe with it is that it kind of insults the audience's intelligence by having to repeatedly explain itself again and again and again. And like you so rightfully pointed out, except how the fucking thing works. But here's the thing, on the scenes where, for instance, you have them walking through the streets of, they're in the dream, and it's Leonardo DiCaprio and Elliot Page, and they're sitting at the table and talking about how everything works. And it's the reveal that you never know you're dreaming. You're in the dream. And that whole montage. On paper, if you were to read that, it is very interesting, but it is very long. It's a long scene. It has a lot of information. It's an info dump of a scene. And despite some really cool visuals, it's basically just people talking and revealing stuff. But man, you are enthralled. God, you are so enthralled. But by like the 5th time they do that, and they're 2 layers down, and they're trying to explain it to so-and-so, that scene, although not as long, it becomes less memorable. You know what I mean? And only when you're watching,
I don't remember what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. But there's just there's moments in there where they start trying to talk about, how it all works. And if we go another level down, they'll do this. But can we die in the dream? Well, yeah, we can die in the dream. I'm like, we've already kind of talked about this shit, and it's not that it's bad by any means. I'm just saying that would be something that I would attribute to maybe a little bit of poor pacing. Having said that, hell of an editor on that film. Those scenes are not as long as the first one, so it's forgivable to me in that sense. You know what I mean? But I think that's where we get into it. You have an idea that's so grandiose, so big, or a character moment that's you're leading up to that you want to remind the reader of again and again and again, because you're like, I want this to stick. I want to stick the landing. I want the big reveal or the outcome of this, the hero's journey, the moment they finally, throw their hand up in the air and they've succeeded. You want it to mean something, so you keep hammering it home. But if that first scene is written well enough, you shouldn't have to mention it again and again and again and
Right.
again. I would say like on my new book, the one that you just read and gave me notes on, like I feel pretty good with the pacing on that because I did something a little different where I jump into other stories and back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But like my main thing is I didn't want to keep bringing up the same thing again and again and again within their stories. You know that Xander the Fox, his parents are probably dead and he's looking for them. You know that Franklin the Ghost doesn't remember anything about their life. And they do mention it a few times, of course, but when the reveal kind of starts to happen towards the end of the book of like he remembers stuff and so on and so forth, as opposed to just reminding the reader again and again and again that was coming, I wanted to start bringing themes of that into these side stories. You know what I mean? And that's directly attributed to the fact that I didn't want to repeat myself. Because, like, it's funny. I look at it as, and I see this all the time on Facebook groups, people who want to pad their projects. So they're, like, really proud. They're like, my goal for this book is 120,000 words, and I'm at 60. But I don't know what else to write. It feels like the story's there, so I guess I'll go back. No, your book's fucking 60,000 words long then. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't just have to throw shit in there. Oh, yeah.
Like
absolutely.
We're going to totally get off topic here, which is totally fine. I am a believer in having those kind of word count or page goals. I actually kind of prefer pages these days.
Yeah.
But I even did that with my last project. My goal is 110 pages for that script. I hit like 92, 93, and I was like, this story's done.
Yeah.
At least for now.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah. And you have to be okay with it. And I think the way it actually bounces back into the pacing thing is I think you start to lose the pace and you start to lose the feeling of things when you just start to like shove, you're
putting unnecessary shit in there.
And so boom, all of a sudden your pacing is off. And again, like you're saying, it's not that it's quote unquote pacing, but you're throwing fodder in there basically for the reader to read that they've already heard, and they're going to go, yeah, that scene, the pacing fell off. Well, it's just because it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's the show. No, just kidding.
I honestly think it's both that simple and that complicated. Is that
right?
Like, because, and let me touch on this again, just in case maybe the listeners think that I'm just lost the plot here, but because we're talking about pacing and I'm saying I don't think it's a real thing, but the reason I'm saying I don't think it's a real thing is that we don't talk about it if it's okay.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you can't measure this out and gauge it and say, oh, this is good pacing.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you can if you're looking for it, but
I think you look for it when I think you look for good pacing within a story or a movie or something when there's bad pacing within it. You know what I mean? Like you're like
something sticks out. Like, holy shit, this is a masterpiece, but that was a stupid ass scene. What the fuck? Like, that drug it down.
The Gorge. Which I love that movie. I have such a soft spot for that movie. I don't know why, but like there's a part I won't give anything away in case whoever's listening has to see it. But there's like a info dump towards the end where they're trying to explain everything in a very short amount of time, and I'm like, the pacing for it is actually pretty good throughout the whole first like third of it. I love the pacing. I love the interconnected between the two characters.
Oh yeah.
And I just thought it was so well written. And as far as visuals go, I love the fucking visuals for it. The acting is, I loved it. I love basically everything about that movie except that one little chunk in there when they get to the lab and they're like, well, here's all the exposition that you need. And I'm like, there had to be a better way to do this, right? There, like, and so you judge the pacing there because I'm just like, Jesus Christ, the pacing is all over the fucking place for that part of the movie.
See, that didn't actually it didn't strike me as bad pacing there. Well, I mean, it was, but that's not what what pinged me. What pinged me was like, it was unnecessary. You could have enjoyed that movie just as much or more without ever finding out the backstory or mystery behind it.
Yes.
In fact, I think that would have been stronger. Like Cloverfield, you never find out what the fuck Cloverfield was, at least not in the first film.
Right.
And that could have been the exact same kind of thing.
God, that would have elevated that movie to such a good height, I feel. Like, and that would have been so bold. And it feels like something maybe the studio was involved in, where they're like, you got to explain the shit.
Like, I think the writers probably had what I just said in mind. And their early drafts of the script were probably like that. And some executives like, nah, we gotta like explain what's going on here.
Yeah.
And the writer's like, when am I going to do that? Page 78. Do it there. Fuck.
Right. Oh my God. You're absolutely right. And because like, especially like they find like the microfilm or whatever, and they're talking about that. And then like, he has to like explain it out loud. And then they have like the fucking computer where he like the shit's pulled up. Right. And there's like articles and blueprints and shit.
Right.
Like you didn't need, you could have had something very,
like, come on.
Right. Like you could have had some very, very vague on the screen, and he could have maybe pieced it together and been like, I think it's maybe this, and then just continue on with it. And I would have loved that. I would have loved it so much more. But again, you're right though, in the sense that like, it's not, maybe this is it. Maybe it's that pacing is a real thing, but that pacing, good or bad, fast or slow, is really built on the power of how good your writing is. You know what I mean? I think strong writers are never questioned over pacing. I mean, I think if you were to read Inglourious Bastards, the script, and not saying never, of course, but like I think if you were to,
I've got some disagreements there, but
okay.
But go ahead.
I don't even I'm drinking. I don't even remember what I said. No, I think if you were to hand the script for Inglourious Bastards to someone who had never seen the film, didn't know it was Quentin Tarantino, and they read that opening scene, they might. I would be curious. I don't know if this is true or not. I would be curious to know if they think the pacing is slow. You know what I mean? Because really what delivers that is that the performance is so strong. So in like a novel form, would that work? Because you don't have Christoph Waltz just tearing up the scenery. If you were to rewrite that in a novel form, would you have to? You would, actually you did that, didn't you? You literally fucking did it.
I don't think that I got up to the level of Quentin Tarantino.
I would be curious word count wise, if you were to take that scene from Me and the Machine and grab that scene from Inglourious Bastards and do a word count on it. I'd be curious to see where they both sat, because I feel like it had all the same tension and beats and stuff like that of like Inglourious Bastards, like in the sense that like I could tell the inspiration behind the scene. Right. But it's got to be shorter. It feels like it's got to be shorter, because when I'm reading, Me and the Machine, and I could be wrong, but when I'm reading it, like it's a pretty quick. The scene itself is actually a pretty quick read. If you're reading, not the audiobook, not as much because there's the pauses in there, but when you're just reading it yourself, you read through it and you're like, oh, this is cool. This has a lot of tension. She said this, he said this, goes back there, blah, blah, blah. There's the reveal. I would be curious to know if that, like, you hit that sweet spot where you basically took something that could be longer and condensed it down, because the pacing feels perfect in that scene. Like it just flows.
Maybe I'll do that. And I'll have to remove like maybe just dialogue to dialogue.
Right. Right.
I'm sure I can find the script for Inglourious Bastards easy enough.
Right.
I'd be curious. Yeah, we've talked about slow pacing quite a bit, but
yeah.
What about fast pacing? What about when a scene just like rushes by and
right?
Like,
well, the thing is, I think when you meet someone special, you need to get to know them really well, guys. So don't move too quick. Ask the questions. Sorry. I was going off on some
foreplay is important.
Foreplay. Don't go too fast. No,
Actually,
what?
I'm going to start telling that to people, like, because this is like when I critique people's work these days, this is the number one problem I guess. I'm going to start using. Sorry, I interrupted you again. I'm doing
That's great.
I'm just being terrible this episode.
Foreplay, I love it. No, I think the first Zia book, I remember writing like the big fight scene at the end, and in my mind, I was just like, this is awesome. And then this little creature is going to turn into this Godzilla-like creature, and then the bad guy's going to turn into this other Godzilla-like creature, and they're going to battle over it, and it's going to have a comedy moment where all of a sudden it goes to our main characters, and they're just sitting there like eating chips, watching. And I was like, that'll be really funny. And I turned it in to like my brother. Like I was like, the book's done, man. Like it's our first book that we're going to do that's like, not a kid's book and stuff. And he's like, it's really good. He's like, but could you like have the fight scene like them do something? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's like a fucking page long. Like, how am I supposed like you basically have them like hit each other twice and then it's fucking over. Like what
Which
is
this? Realistic sometimes.
Right. Fair. But, and so I had to go back and start to work with the pacing of it, in the sense that now, as we've progressed further, and by the time I got to like the third book, and there it comes to like a bigger fight scene, I'm like describing how the character flips over the other character, and then they say this, and then this happens, and then the wall falls down, and you start to bring in these little details that you're kind of trying. I think when you're writing it's not just a fight scene. But I think when your pacing is off, as far as like the pacing is too fast, I find that a lot of times, at least in books, it's usually kind of like fight action scenes, like stuff's happening kind of shit. It's like the reader, it's like the writer just wants to get the shit done and get onto the dialogue. And we've kind of talked about this before, right? It's like when you're describing something or world building, sometimes you just want to get that shit over with because you're just like, I just want to get to the dialogue. And so sometimes during the fight scenes, I kind of feel like writers do that too. Yeah. But what I've found is if you treat it like a conversation, that pacing maintains. Every move they make, every brick that falls, every laser blast, whatever you're writing, I feel like every single one of those is like a line from a character, and so you should put as much work into that as you would during like a conversation.
Yep.
So that would be my thought on like pacing this too fast. It feels like you just want to get it over with.
Yeah. Agreed. It's funny you say that though. Like my early work, my fight scenes were way too slow.
Oh, really?
Coming from a background that I came from, I'm like, man, I'm going to be able to make this shit realistic. Like, right. I understand this stuff. So I'm like going through blow by blow, like describing jujitsu and shit like this. And holy shit, is that boring? You don't want to read that. And what I really didn't understand though is like the fight scene is really a culmination of the conflict and the emotion.
Yeah.
And like, that's what matters. You don't want to play by play like you're reading about some fight that's happening right now, but you don't have the pay-per-view. So all you've got is the internet.
But it's like the Twitter updates, like you're scrolling through, refreshing every 5 seconds.
That's pretty much how my early fight scenes read, and they were awful. But yeah, from like, I've constantly, like almost every time I critique somebody's work these days, it feels like I'm telling them, hey, slow this down, take your time with these characters. Let's feel this scene, because it just feels like you're trying to get to the next thing. And that's been absolutely the most common problem I've run into, critiquing other people's work. And I like the idea of pointing them to wool. I don't know if you've ever read that or not, or watched the show or anything. The show is Silo. They renamed it.
Okay. Yeah. We I think we've talked about it. Yeah.
Have we?
Yeah.
Wool, if you don't, I mean, I think it's a great book and it's short. But even if you don't want to read the whole book, you can go to Amazon and look at the sample pages. And the sample pages have this first scene of the guy just walking up the stairs. And it is so good. It is a guy walking up a big flight of stairs.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And it is so good. And he's like describing, you get so much world building and character out of him taking these steps upwards, and how the steps are worn through from generations and generations of people's feet. And just it's so beautiful and so powerful, and it is slow.
Yeah.
Like, he is taking his time. It's a drip.
Yeah.
And I really think that a lot of people, I think sometimes myself included, need to be reminded of that, just to slow down, take your time. Because I think there's a lot of bad advice from actual industry professionals about this shit. You see it all the time. Like, agents and editors are talking about, start the story as late as you can, get to the action as fast as you can, get to the inciting incident in the first page, if not the first paragraph.
Right.
And while there's some truth to that, you do want that tension. You do want the inciting incident usually to be pretty close. That doesn't mean jump in running every time. Right.
Well, and it depends on the story, right? Like it's so dependent on the story that you're trying to tell. I've talked about it before, and I'm just going to always plug my own books for anybody that's listening, because I'm a little bit of a literary whore like that. But in Petrichor, the first chapter is literally just this dude with his grandmother dead in the other room, covered in the sheet, waiting for the coroners to arrive at his house. That's the whole scene. That's it. That's nothing else happens until they finally show up, and he's looking at his watch and
right.
Yeah. And he's describing the house. He's describing growing up there, the smell of the rain incoming, how he hates that smell, which is important later. All that stuff. Ironically, it's a super slow scene, and if you read it out of context and didn't read the rest of the book, you'd be like, what's the point of that fucking scene, to a point. But it is the inciting incident. It is the whole point of the book, is because that happens. So you can do both. You can have the inciting incident, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah. No, I think that is such good advice. I think if your pacing feels fast, slow it down. Yeah. If your pacing feels slow, don't speed it up, rewrite it. Because I think that's the thing. I think that, take a second look at that. I think anytime someone's like, the pacing is slow, I feel like you just wrote something bad. You know what I mean? Like
or just unnecessary.
Or unnecessary. You've repeated yourself. You've mentioned the planet they're going to 6 times in 2 pages, and no one needs to hear that shit. So it's repetitive, and they're like, oh, you could shrink that down. And like we've talked about before, you don't have to unnecessarily make something long just to make something long. We talked about the story about the wife who finds out her husband's cheating on her, and they have the whole conversation in the kitchen, and it's this long thing in the script, and the guy has other guy rewrite it so it takes place in the elevator, and it's like no words, it's very short, and it's very powerful. If you haven't heard that story, go back and listen to it on one of our earlier podcasts. I don't remember which one it was.
Who knows what episode that was?
I guess you'll have to start from the beginning.
Maybe subtext or dialogue, or I don't know.
Who knows? Fuck it.
We kind of bowled right through it, so I want to take us back a little bit, because I had a question I wanted to ask. The scene in Petrichor that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Obviously you said it feels slow. He's just sitting there in the moment. It's, the energy of it. How long do you think the scene is, like in pages or words? Do you have a guess?
It is, man, I wish I had it with me. I think it's
Wait,
actually one of you do. Yes, you do. It is in the book. Look at that. He's bringing it down. It should be.
Should I actually start reading this now that I've got new glasses? Like I wasn't reading it because like my glasses sucked and I couldn't fucking see a paper book. But
the book also sucks. So just kidding. I think Petrichor is the 5th story in there.
Well, starts at page 443. This is a thick bitch.
Yeah, it is. Bang for your buck, baby.
Okay, 443.
I like this. I'm not going to edit this at all.
This is a great audio here. If anybody's just watching this thing,
it's just Wesley flipping through a book like
while
casually.
I'm doing this. Maybe you could plug this on your OnlyFans. I mean your website. Let us know where to find this.
Well, you can go to harmspublications.com and you can find, if you're interested in my Gothic novellas, you can find a volume 1. It's a one foot in front of the other, the collected works of Nathan Harms, volume 1, and you can get all 6 books for a low, low price of, I don't know what it is on Amazon right now. But it's cheaper than buying all 6 books, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, no, I think it's one of the longer chapters.
I should have just looked at the chapter, but I was looking for a scene break to see if it was like a whole. But no, it's the whole chapter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and about a quarter.
So 9 1/4 pages, which is pretty for what I write, with novellas and stuff.
Yeah,
that's a pretty hefty chapter, and that's one scene.
And I think I saw like 3 lines of dialogue as I was skimming through.
Yeah, it's just all internal dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I love it so much because it is just there's something about writing a small moment and expanding upon it.
Yeah.
If it makes you excited as a writer, and you really want to bring people in, it's just so fun to do. Like, because you want them to taste, they want to taste the air and they want to feel the surface of the wood.
It's what we can do better. Like, you can't. Brandon Sanderson talks about this in all of his lectures, so I'm just gonna rip this straight from him.
I like
it. He talks about what books do well and what they don't do as well as other mediums. And he talks about fight scenes. He uses fight scenes very specifically because he's like, you can have like a guy punching and kicking other guys and fighting other people. And he's like, you are never going to do that in a book as entertaining as Jackie Chan can do it on screen.
Right. Yeah.
He's like,
100%.
I can watch Jackie Chan kick people and hit them with ladders and do all kinds of crazy shit well, he doesn't say shit because he's a Mormon, but he's like, he's like, I can watch that for 30 minutes straight, but you do that in a book for that long? No.
Yeah. Bad pacing, right?
But go watch his videos. He says it much better than I just regurgitated that.
No, it's a really, really solid piece of advice there, though. Yeah, I came
up with it myself.
I know you did. We'll edit out the whole part where you reference someone else. Yeah, and it's interesting. One of the things I really like about us having these conversations, especially when we're not as prepared, is I kind of get really introspective with myself and think about things a little bit differently,
Yeah.
And as we're sitting here, we're talking about fast-paced, slow-paced, stuff like that. It really brings a lot into perspective, You can have something that could be slow-paced on the surface. It's actually very fast-paced, It's the opening scene in Inglourious Bastards. You could have the fight scene, like he's talking about. You have the fight scene that's could be way too fast-paced in the book because, you don't want to do it for 30 minutes. The question is, if you do it for 3 pages, how do you make it interesting? And so really, I really just think it comes back to something we've talked about a lot in this show. And we've talked about it actually at the top of the show when I was talking about like the new book that I want to write. And like, I go to bed at night and I'm thinking about that first chapter. And that's a good sign, right? We've talked about that. If you have parts in your book where you feel the pacing is off, just think about those parts of the book until you're excited to write it. You know what I mean? Like, replay it in your head. What does that look like as if it were a film? How would I describe it to make it more emotional? Am I repeating myself too much?
Yeah.
Because I don't think someone can look at a book and just say, you're right. It's like going to a doctor and they give you the symptoms, but not the cause. I mean, it's a great analogy. It's like the pacing's all off.
And that's fine if somebody tells you that. What does that
mean? Right. But
like they might not have the vocabulary or story understanding to tell you, hey, what's wrong with this?
But that doesn't mean the pacing is off with your whole book. It probably means there's a few spots in it where it either lags or runs forward. And like a good song, even if it has slow and big parts, you're still playing it at the same speed, right? You're not actually speeding up the tape and slowing it down. That's true. Plenty of those, buddy. Plenty of those. Oh, man. That's why we have click tracks.
Yeah.
Your book needs a click track. That's what you need.
That's the thing, though. There is no mathematical way to do this. There's like you can't quantify pacing.
No.
In a story.
Because, and you've said it before, you're kind of a slow reader, right?
Yes.
And it depends on how much I like something, and how much time I have too. If I really like something, I actually tend to read it slower. It's kind of weird. I just like to really take my time with it and immerse myself in it. It's like every Sunday I want to sit down, drink my coffee, and read this book. If I'm just kind of trying to get through something, I'm just like, trying to get through it. Hence, I have not finished Me and the Machine, so you should feel special.
Yes. Well, unless you're like, fuck this shit and put it down. You're like, oh my God, I'm just going to tell him it was good because I don't want to hurt his feelings.
What did you think of the scene where this happened? And you just like make up something that never happened. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, that was awesome. You're like, lies.
Man.
Fucking liar.
Yeah. What did you think about when John dies?
Who the fuck is John?
He dies at the end.
Well, everybody dies at the end. Oh, John dies at the end. I got that reference. That's a good reference. No, I think you're absolutely right, though. But like going back to like how quickly you read something, if you're a really fast reader, like, I mean, is it really fair to say the pacing is off in the book? Like, you know what I mean? Or if you're a really slow reader, is it fair to say like, I don't know, like, is that part of the mathematics? I don't know the answers to it, but if you are a slow reader, is every book going to feel slowly paced? You know what I mean? Like,
I would say no, though, because like I was telling you, that's my main problem with most of the critiques that I've been doing is that they're just rushing through, and I am a slow reader.
Yeah.
So I would say that's probably not the case, at least not with me.
Because you're like me, you like to live in the world. Like if you're reading something, you and by the way, you read my last book really quickly, so
it wasn't very long.
I know, I'm just kidding, I'm fucking with you.
And I actually had the time.
That's fair. I think, and you didn't read it. I knew that. It's really interesting, though. Like the more we talk about it, I want to. This is what I'll put out there, and then you can add whatever you want. Of course, I think you're right. I think
of course
pacing. Well, of course, I think pacing as a concept that we've come to know it as like a metric that you can measure, I think doesn't actually exist. So I'll put on my tinfoil hat with you. I think it comes to living in the moment or doing a better job at writing. Like, you know what I mean? I think people read those things and misconstrue them as a pacing element because of their emotional reaction to the scene.
Yeah,
that's
I suppose
kinda,
that part is real. Their emotional response is real.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess we can say it's real as a concept. I just don't think that if there's nothing you can actually point to.
Right.
But anyway, I'm just kind of rehashing ground now, and that's going to slow the pace of our show.
I would say this. I would say if someone reads your book and they say the pacing is off, ask them to be more specific. Say, was there a certain part of it where the pacing fell off? Like, was it the whole thing? And if they say yes, it's the whole thing. Like, I just don't buy that. Like, unless you're like a horrible, horrible writer, and they're a horrible, horrible reader.
Like, or they stopped reading.
Like, the pacing seemed off. It does. It doesn't. It seem like the critique you give when you don't, like, you didn't actually. It's like you do a book report and you didn't actually read the fucking book, and they're like, "What are your critiques of the book?" You're like, "The pacing seemed all off." Like, it's a throwaway fucking critique. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Like, this is off topic, but have you heard of board betas?
No. I can guess, but
it's really weird. I only found out about this like a year or two ago, but it's become kind of a thing. So if a writer, like, say I've got a manuscript that I'm working on, but I know it's got some kind of major issue.
Right.
And I haven't really been able to diagnose what it is, but I know that that it's not working. I'll give it out to like a handful of readers and beta readers and be like, you know what? I don't care. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Just tell me where you stop reading. I know you're not going to make it all the way through this. Tell me where you stop reading. And if that's all you can tell me, that's fine. Just what page, where you're just like, I'm done.
Right.
And you get that data in, and that tells you something. Okay. Everybody stopped around page like 30-ish.
Right.
Yeah. So I've got some issues leading up to that. It probably wasn't that page. It was probably like, maybe the 10 pages before it. But I just thought that was brilliant. You definitely have to set your ego aside to do that. But I love that tactic.
Oh, it's a great tactic. Oh my gosh. Well, because that's the thing. Like, you shouldn't. Listen, I think it's great when you give stuff to beta readers. I think it's great to get your ego stroked because you do it. That's fine. Like, don't get me wrong. And in a lot of ways, that's been so far most of my experience actually has been I give it to beta readers and they're like, I really like this. And maybe they'll give me a little bit here and there, but I don't get a whole ton back from them. But if they were to just rip it apart, it would be totally fine. Like, I'd be fine with that as well. What's interesting to me, and this actually, it's funny, it's like I've been doing this but didn't realize it, it's how many of them actually finish reading it. Since I'm not paying them to do it, there's no carrot at the end of the stick. So, if 2 out of 10 finish reading it, maybe I have a problem. If 5 out of 10 finish reading it, okay, I'm probably okay. If more than that finish reading it, then I'm probably in a pretty good space. And I think I was at like 8 or 9 out of 10, like reading this book and finishing it. So to me, I was just like, that actually gave me more information. So then I could go through it with some of the actual comments and then like your notes and say, okay, this, that, and the other, and change just little things here and there. Cause like even all your notes were like, so,
they're small stuff.
They're so small. It was like a sentence. I think when you're like, it's interesting that basically Xander would choose to stand his ground versus just run away immediately. I think that got like a paragraph maybe of like internal thought of him like weighing the options or something.
I'm glad you did something. That little bit needed something.
Yeah, and it just gives a little bit of validation. Like, even though it's kind of like very much like frozen in fear, and like by the time he realizes it, it's like, like trying to justify it to himself. Like, well, if I wake him up and then like we go here, then we're not going to continue with our journey, and then we're going to be backpedaling. Like kind of just, it's basically just a quick internal monologue of like, nah, fuck it, I'm going to try to stand my ground.
But that turns it into a character moment instead of just some things that happen.
Exactly. And so like that's really what you're looking for when you're doing critiques is like, and someone might have read that and said, yeah, that felt a little like too fast paced. You know what I mean? Like, and then I could look at it and say, okay, well, there's something missing from there. Cause like, maybe that's the thing you're going, okay, I just need to add to it. I just need to add a little bit. And I'm not even joking. Most of the time, by the time I give my stuff to other people to review, it's usually like a sentence or two here and there, a word change, and it can change the quote unquote pacing of a scene dramatically.
Yeah.
So like, I would say that like, even if like they're like the pacing is really quick, like that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to add, you know, page after page after page to it. Right. It just is rethink what you're doing.
Well, it could be the opposite too. And I mean, we're kind of going off like we're kind of extending this out farther, but that scene that I've talked about a couple of times now, cause it's one of my favorite scenes, with, and Me and the Machine with, Gabby and C at the river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that character moment. The first time I wrote that though, it felt too long. It dragged, and most of the dialogue was the same. Yeah. Like I changed some little things, but like the general thrust of that scene was the same.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, they're not really doing anything. They're just talking.
Right. Right.
So I had the idea, okay, what if there's a solar flare event and they're in danger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the scenes felt too long. And what did I do? I added to it and made it longer.
Yeah.
It felt shorter.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm trying to say with her, but
no. I think it's a really good point. I think same thing to be said for like a fight scene or something like that, right? So sometimes it's okay to kill the bad guy really quickly. And I'm okay with that. Like, you don't have to drag it on. You can actually shorten it, because sometimes, again, it feels like too fast, right? Like you kill the bad guy. There's this fight. Not a lot happens, you know, it feels a little rushed and stuff like that. And I've actually had this happen before in, some of my other books where like when the big bad shows up or whatever, I actually shorten that. And I make it a really quick interaction, because the whole point of the book maybe isn't that part, right? Maybe it's the emotions that precurse that, the moments that lead up to the battle and the moments after the battle. And so maybe the truth of the truth of the matter is the monster charges the hero and he stabs it in the heart, and that's it. And it's quick and it's done. You don't have to do that if the character's emotions are being shown. And so ironically, you can take something that's too quick, shorten it, and make it right. Like, and I think that's kind of what you're saying in the opposite way of just like you're adding stakes and other events to a dialogue conversation. You're making it longer, but somehow because there's higher stakes or there's this other outside force or something else is happening, it all of a sudden makes it flow correctly. So yeah, I guess if you're listening to us and you're jotting down notes and trying to figure out how to fix your pacing of your book, we don't know. No. I mean, I think there's a lot of good information there. I think it really depends. I think the main thing is this: if your pacing is off in your book, like people have told you your pacing is off, find out where, and you probably already know. You know, you probably already know the part where you either
just send it to us and we'll analyze it for the low cost of
$1 million.
I'm just gonna start selling shit on this show.
I like it. I mean, like at some point, that's what it's going to turn into once I lose my job. Anyway,
and now a word from our sponsors, Squarespace. Wait, no. Not going to actually say that until they pay us.
Right. Other food product that shows up to your door that looks really good until you put it in the microwave and it does not look as good. You know that one.
Or it is actually really good, but it's like 2 bites.
Right. And that introductory offer price goes away real quick.
They're like, it's only 300 calories because it's not any food.
I could put this on a cracker. No, I think I think that about covers it for this episode. Wesley, do you have anything you want to plug, say, talk about before we kick her down the road?
I just want to plug a future episode that we're trying to book, because I'm pretty excited about this. We've got I've started thinking of them as our sister podcast, but I have no right to claim them like that. But there's this other really awesome podcast that I listen to, Plotless, and they're also writing focused, although they talk about all kinds of shit. But they're really witty, clever, and cool people. And we've gotten them to agree to do a crossover episode with us that we're just trying to work out the details.
In principle. Are they,
in principle?
Let me ask you this. Until we actually do it, it's all in principle. Are they, because I don't know the answer to this, are they drinkers?
Well, yes, I think, I know at least one of them is, not an alcoholic, but I don't think they drink when they do their podcast.
Okay. I had an idea, but maybe we'll save it for one of our episodes where we have a hat full of topics to talk about. But before we can move on to the next one, we have to finish our drink.
Oh,
could be fun. Anyway,
that could work because we have no idea what we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
we could have topics and half the things in the hat are just drink.
I love it. That's awesome. Anyway, yes, future episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna do that.
What about you? I mean, we already talked about your OnlyFans site, but might as well mention it again.
If you're looking
that you have a website and I don't, you son of a...
If you want to visit my website, there's 2 websites actually. Visit harmspublications.com. While websites are still a thing, we will keep it up and running. It's just going to take you to Amazon, I'm going to be honest with you, or one of the other things. I will say this. If you get either Me and the Machine or any of my books or anything like that, please jump on either Goodreads or Amazon or whatever and leave a review. I just went through recently and I had a few new reviews on some stuff, and that's always really cool to see. I love hearing good and bad, doesn't matter. If you like anything that you've read from either of us, please review it online. And
or if you don't like it, I actually don't have any bad reviews yet, and I'm kind of excited to get my first 1-star review.
You know what's funny? I have the 2-star reviews, the 3-star reviews, but they're never associated with a comment. So it's just it just brings down my star rating. And I'm like, son of a bitch, at least tell me what was wrong with it.
I feel like the reviews are for other people, but if you're going to review it as a 3-star, tell people why you think it's a 3-star. Because the reason you didn't like it might be the reason somebody else does like it.
Yeah. For mine, it'd be too much sex.
For your kid's book.
For my kid's book.
I've actually got a huge rant loaded up in the chamber about the star review system, but I don't think we should get into that today.
I think we should get into it next week.
Let's talk about that some other time.
Yeah, let's do that.
Because that's going to be a good 15, 20, 30 minutes of just me yelling.
I love it. We'll do it next episode. I'll line up a few drinks, and every time you curse, I'll take a sip. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to us. We appreciate it. And tune in next week where we'll hear Wesley's rant about the star rating review. Ciao.
Ciao.